fire trucks because telephone poles don't have windows. Let's talk about what I think is a very, very effective and perhaps underrated non-argument and sophistic device. I've certainly been the victim of it, and I've probably been a perpetrator of it more than a few times as well. And that's what I call derailment and what some people call a non-sequitur. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it's so effective, and sometimes we don't realize it's being done. Before I dig into it, let me clear the air a little bit about non-sequitur. Non-sequitur is a Latin term meaning it doesn't follow. And in logic, it means something different than what it means in most contexts of debate and in a literary context. In logic, a non sequitur is where you have a conclusion that cannot be logically derived from whatever conditions are supposed to give rise to that conclusion. So if you have something that's like denying the antecedent, if you say, men are mammals, Harriet Tubman is not a man, therefore she's not a mammal. That's an example of the logical non sequitur. In terms of literary devices, we use the word non sequitur often to mean something that's unrelated. It doesn't follow from the topic at hand. It's not related to whatever we're debating about. It's something different. And that's why I like to use the word derailment rather than non sequitur. So the obvious example that people will give is something that like clearly has nothing to do with the topic at hand. But most of the time, the effective use of this is it's somewhat tangentially related to the topic at hand, but doesn't refute any claims. It just attempts to move the conversation to a different area. So the obvious version would be like I make a claim that the GDP of Ireland has been declining over the last 5 years due to this economic policy. And the response would be, what about the frogs that live in the mist of Victoria Falls? What about them? That's a really obvious non sequitur. It's a really obvious form of derailment. But most of them are not so obvious. So let me give you a little bit better example that I think is probably more effective. If I make a claim, and this is a claim that I've made, I think, on this channel, that unions can be disadvantageous if they are representing groups of workers with highly diverse skill sets, especially if those workers have a diversity of market value associated with those skill sets. Now, so there's the claim, right? And the response would be, well, unions gave you 40-hour work weeks. Unions created, health safety codes. Unions did this. Unions did that. And then if as the person over here, you start being inclined to engage with that because it's related to unions, and the first topic is related to unions as well. But it's actually a non sequitur. It doesn't follow from the original argument. It doesn't refute it. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a derailment. And you have successfully moved the conversation from this specific area, unions are bad for these specific people, to this general area, unions are generally bad. And when it's used successfully, you can also get people to end up making a claim that they didn't originally make. So if I make the claim that unions are bad for these specific individuals in this specific setting, then you use this non sequitur, and all of a sudden that person's arguing for unions are bad, and they may not even believe that unions are bad, but they find themselves on the other side of that argument because of the way that debates are organized. Then you've really been successful. You've been successful in the sense that rather than having to refute the claim that unions are bad for those diverse skill set individuals, you're now just dealing with general claims about unions, and it's a lot easier to at least have a stalemate, if not sort of win the debate on those terms without ever having to deal with the original claim and the original topic at hand. So in that case, it could be very effective. We see this all the time, all over the place, like presidential debates. It's really, really common to have some person make a claim and another person responds with these non sequitur talking points. These talking points that have nothing to, they don't follow from the first claim. Things are just kind of cobbled together ad hoc to produce a message that is emotionally appealing. As a sophistic device, though, it's very effective. Remember, like, your goals when you're using sophistry, and I don't recommend using sophistry. We want to protect ourselves from sophistry. But the goal when you're using sophistry is to convince someone, especially a third party, of the correctness of your position, and you'll do that any way you can do it. So if you can take the conversation in directions that are advantageous for you, let you say things that are emotionally appealing, doing all the things that sophists do, that's good. So derailment can be really, really effective of just moving a conversation away from an area where you are at a disadvantage and into an area where you are at an advantage. So that's that non-argument. I call it derailment. Some people call it the non sequitur. Give me some examples. I'm sure that you've experienced some examples. Maybe I've done it to you. If I have, I apologize. But it's sometimes we do it unintentionally because like we said, we're armed with all these like ideas, and then we see something that kind of enters that sphere, and we just start throwing the ideas out. We start shooting them out like missiles, without really thinking about the original claim. Sometimes it's a frequent thing that humans do. We're fallible creatures. So give me some examples. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my relevant stuff is in the comment box for my websites and book and all that kind of stuff. If you would like to support the channel, I do appreciate it. Have a great day, and I will see you on the flip side.